My husband wrapped my gifts in newspaper for 9 years. I wrapped his divorce papers in it. So my husband Glenn had this thing where he wrapped every single gift he ever gave me in a newspaper. I am not exaggerating. Every birthday, every anniversary, every Christmas for 9 years of marriage. He would grab whatever section of the paper was lying around, fold it up around whatever he got me, and slap a piece of tape on it. The first time he did it, I thought it was cute, like maybe he was being quirky. Or it was an inside joke I had not figured out yet. Then I opened it, and it was a pack of hair ties from the dollar store for my birthday. I laughed it off because we had only been dating for a few months, but it never stopped. Year after year, I would get newspaper-wrapped gifts with the most thoughtless stuff inside. A lint roller, a pack of batteries, a phone charger from the gas station. One year, he gave me an oven mitt for our anniversary, wrapped in the Sunday comics. Meanwhile, I would spend weeks picking out his gifts. I got him a watch he had been wanting for his 30th birthday. I threw him a surprise party with all his friends for his 35th. I saved up for months to get him a gaming setup for Christmas. He opened every single one of those gifts, said thanks, babe, and never once thought maybe he should step it up for me. Every time I brought it up, he hit me with the same line. He said it is what is inside that counts and that I was being materialistic. He told me I cared too much about appearances. He actually told our friends at dinner one night that I was the kind of person who cared more about wrapping paper than love. Everyone laughed. I sat there and smiled because what else was I supposed to do? Then his mom's birthday came around. Glenn asked me to go pick up her gift because he was busy. I said sure and asked where it was. He told me it was at the department store because he had ordered her a designer handbag and it was ready for pickup. I almost dropped my phone. I went and picked it up and it was sitting in a beautiful box with tissue paper and ribbon. He had it gift wrapped at the store for his mom. 2 weeks later, it was his sister's birthday. He bought her a gold necklace. He wrapped it himself in this thick, fancy paper with a handmade card. I stood in our bedroom holding that card and something just clicked in my head. He knew how to put in effort. He just decided I was not worth it. I confronted him that night and asked why his mom and sister got real gifts in real wrapping and I got batteries in a newspaper. He looked at me like I was being ridiculous and said, "That's different. That is my family." I told him I was his wife. He said, "Exactly. You are not going anywhere, so why does it matter?" That sentence lived in my head for weeks. Things got worse after that. My birthday came around and he gave me a dustpan. In the newspaper, he did not even get a card. When I did not react, he told me I was being ungrateful and that some women do not even get gifts from their husbands. His mom called me the next day and said I should appreciate that Glenn even remembers my birthday because her husband never did. Like that was supposed to make me feel better about getting a dustpan. Glenn started telling people I was impossible to shop for as his excuse. He told his friends I was never happy with anything he got me. He left out the part where anything meant a lint roller in the sports section. Then, he came to me and asked me to plan his 40th birthday party. He wanted a specific restaurant, a specific guest list, and a cake from a specific bakery. I did all of it. I planned the entire thing, bought him a leather jacket he had been eyeing for months, and wrapped it in a nice bag with tissue paper. He had the time of his life at that party. 2 days later, I asked him what he was planning for my birthday, which was 3 weeks out. He said, "Oh, I will figure something out." I knew right then what I was going to get. Newspaper and disappointment. So I stopped. His next gift occasion was Valentine's Day. I went to the gas station and bought him a bag of chips and a scratch-off ticket. I wrapped it in newspaper. When he opened it, he just stared at it. He asked me what this was. I said, "It is what is inside that counts." He did not laugh. He told me it was disrespectful and that he expected more from me as his wife. I told him I learned gift giving from him. He went quiet for about an hour and then acted as if nothing happened, but I was not done. For his birthday, I got him a can opener, wrapped in newspaper. I handed it to him in front of his mom and his sister. He opened it and his face went completely red. His mom, Veronica, said maybe I just didn't understand Glenn's sense of humor. His sister, Piper, mumbled something about the bathroom and disappeared. His friend Silas tried to laugh about practical gifts making a comeback, and Glenn sat there holding the can opener with his face that deep red color that made his ears look purple. Veronica told a story about Glenn's dad giving her a mop for Christmas, and I nodded without pointing out he also bought her a car that same year. Everyone left quickly after that, and Glenn turned on me immediately, throwing the can opener onto the counter so hard it bounced into the sink, asking what the hell that was supposed to be, calling me petty and vindictive, saying I deliberately tried to make him look like a bad husband. I told him I gave him the same type of gift he had been giving me for 9 years, and he stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language, saying that was completely different because his gifts were things I needed around the house. I walked to the hall closet and pulled out the dustpan he gave me last year still in its packaging, and set it on the counter next to the can opener, and asked him to explain how a dustpan was more practical than a can opener. And when I told him to name one gift that showed he knew anything about what I liked, he said hair ties, and I reminded him those were from the dollar store, and I had short hair at the time. The next few days were silent, with Glenn leaving early and coming home late, and on the 4th day, he came into the kitchen and asked if we could just forget the whole thing, saying every couple has issues, and he would try harder with gifts if it meant that much, but I needed to stop punishing him. I looked at him standing there, already assuming this conversation would end with everything going back to normal, and realized I didn't want normal anymore, so I told him I needed time to think. I called my coworker during lunch and asked for the name of her divorce lawyer, and she texted me the information with 3 heart emojis and the words "you deserve better." I stared at the name for 2 days before calling to schedule a consultation, and on Tuesday I told Glenn I had a dentist appointment and drove to a building downtown I passed every day but never noticed. The lawyer, Tiana, had dark hair in a bun and a gray suit and listened without interrupting as I told her about 9 years of thoughtless gifts wrapped in newspaper, about the designer handbag for his mom and the gold necklace for his sister, about the dustpan and the can can opener. She called it emotional neglect and said some people don't realize they're doing it, but that doesn't make it hurt less. And at the end, she told me to think about what I really wanted, because divorce was a big step, but so was staying in a marriage where you felt invisible. I spent 2 weeks gathering papers, photographing bank statements, copying mortgage documents, scanning tax returns at the library, and Glenn didn't notice any of it. Around the 3rd week, Glenn started acting different, bringing home food from my favorite place, asking about my day, offering to do dishes, but it felt forced and empty because it came from fear, not from actually caring. He came home with a silver bracelet with blue stones that was actually nice, and I told him it was beautiful, and let him fasten it on my wrist and felt absolutely nothing, because the gesture was 9 years too late. That weekend, I told him we needed to talk, and said I wasn't happy, and he immediately looked at the bracelet and got defensive, asking what more I wanted, pointing at it saying he was trying. I said 9 years of feeling like I didn't matter couldn't be fixed with one nice gift, and he stood up pacing, saying he always provided for me, never cheated or lied, listing basic responsibilities like paying the mortgage and fixing the sink and taking out the trash. I asked why it took a can opener, wrapped in newspaper, for him to finally buy me something nice, and he didn't have an answer. We went in circles for 2 hours until I said I thought we needed to separate, and he actually laughed like I told a bad joke, saying I was being dramatic over wrapping paper. His complete inability to understand that this was about 9 years of being treated like an afterthought confirmed I was making the right choice. He started apologizing for real and listing promises like reading from a script, saying he would change and do better and go to counseling, and I told him I was willing to try counseling, but needed space and was going to stay with my sister. He followed me as I packed my suitcase, alternating between apologies and accusations, saying I was throwing away 9 years over nothing. I drove to my sister's house with my phone buzzing constantly, and she opened the door before I knocked and hugged me and took my suitcase. And later at her kitchen table, she told me she always thought Glenn took me for granted, but didn't want to interfere, that she watched me shrink over the years trying to make myself smaller, so his thoughtlessness wouldn't hurt as much. And I cried not because I was sad about leaving, but because someone finally saw what I had been going through. 2 weeks in, Glenn showed up outside my sister's house with flowers and a 3-page letter about how much he loved me. But when I read it twice, there was no real understanding of the years of hurt, because the whole letter focused on how his feelings were hurt now, how my leaving damaged him, with no acknowledgement that I spent 9 years feeling exactly how he felt. I met with Tiana again and told her I was ready to move forward with divorce, gave her my organized list of assets and debts, and she said she would have everything filed by the end of the week. I had the divorce papers delivered to Glenn at work, wrapped in newspaper with a note that said, "It is what is inside that counts." And he called 30 seconds later, yelling that I humiliated him in front of his coworkers. And I waited for him to finish, then said, "I learned from the best." Veronica called to say she was disappointed in me for giving up on her son, and I told her he gave up on me years ago, that I got newspaper and dustpans while she got designer handbags with ribbons, and she hung up without saying goodbye. Piper texted saying she was sorry, and that the can opener birthday made more sense to her now than it did that night, and at least someone in his family understood. The divorce took 4 months, with Glenn fighting over furniture he never cared about before his lawyer convinced him to be reasonable, and I signed the final papers in Tiana's office on a cold morning in February. 6 months after the can opener birthday, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes with furniture. I picked out myself a blue couch instead of the brown Glenn insisted on, pictures hung on walls without asking anyone's opinion. I started painting again after 7 years because Glenn said it made a mess, joined a book club, made plans with friends without checking if Glenn needed me home. Some nights I felt lonely on my blue couch and wondered if I made a mistake. Then I would remember the newspaper-wrapped dustpan and the way Glenn laughed when I said I wanted a divorce, and I knew I chose myself, and that choice felt right.